Thank you very much for coming to this talk. My name's Maryam Umar. I work as the head of quality at a fintech in London called Thought Machine. This talk is very personal to me, and I really hope as a result of this talk, I can help at least one person in the audience, or I can help multiple people understand the challenges of mental health in the workplace. Today I want to talk to you about how I became agile when it came to mental health. This is a wiki page about my father. I'm originally from Pakistan, and my father retired as Vice Admiral of the Pakistan Navy. He has an impeccable career of about 37 years behind him. My mother, who doesn't have a wiki page, also has an amazing career. She retired as an English literature professor and taught at various colleges and universities. She also had a career of about 30 years. When you're raised in a family where your parents are high achievers like this, it adds some unsaid expectations as children in the house. The expectations were the same for me and my brother. Although our parents never said this, we were always expected to be in the top 5 of our class. We were expected to submit amazing homeworks and amazing school projects and so on. And there was no room for failure. We were expected to be perfect. When I did my degree in software engineering back home, and I was expected to do very well there as well. Fortunately, I did. And when I did my second degree, I actually managed to publish a research paper as well in 2005 under my maiden name, which you can search for online. My life completely changed in 2005. I moved to the UK. I had new people in my life, new relatives. It was a completely different country, and I also took admission in King's College London for a master's degree. Moving to a new country was not easy, because Maryam was always expected to do very well in whatever she did. She was expected to pull this off together as well. In my degree, I did a course about software testing. I've been a hands-on tester for about 10 years in my career. And when I did that course, I realized that expectation of doing very well and doing very well during my early years actually helped me understand that in software engineering, this is what I want to do. I want to help deliver amazing products. Either I can help plan how to create those products, or I can help test those products and make sure that the customer requirements are always met. And that's how I chose a job in quality assurance. What's interesting about quality assurance is that everything is quite outward. You're always thinking about the customer. You're always thinking about the requirements of the customer. You're thinking about providing a guarantee to them. And you're thinking about meeting a standard, aka everything has to be perfect. What I didn't realize was that working as a software tester, we have quite a few challenges. I assume most of you have worked or are working in agile teams. And working in an agile team, usually software testers have a really bad dev to test ratio. As hands-on testers, we are expected to sometimes support 5, 8, or 10 engineers. People have 2-week sprints. And what happens is none of the tickets are ready towards the end of the second week. And that creates problems for software testers. They're expected to test sometimes 5 or 10 tickets in parallel. And that's what happened to me as well. I would end up having 2 or 3 days left only to test all the tickets. But because I wanted to be perfect, I did not want to be the person in the team delaying the delivery of any of those tickets. I also did not want to be the person who would miss any bugs while testing or be part of the team where a production issue was missed and found by the customer. A little bit about my career. The first job I had, I was working in a very small fintech, and I was a manual tester there. I very quickly moved into writing automation scripts because I felt I was wasting a lot of time doing repetitive things which computers are better at doing. So I started writing a lot of tests and really spending time on understanding what types of test scenarios to cover. The second job I did was mostly about testing shortcodes. By shortcodes, I mean sometimes you have these online surveys where you get phone messages about text yes to 85544 or things like that, or text no, and so on. And the company I was working in was setting up billing software for these shortcodes. And the perfectionist in me would actually do boundary value testing around midnight. I used to take the test phones home and I ran tests at 11:59 seconds PM, midnight AM, midnight 01 AM, midnight 01 millisecond AM, and so on, because that's the level of detail I wanted to go into because I did not want to fail. What I didn't realize was as I was trying to work like this, I was creating a lot of stress for myself. I was not allowing myself to understand that testing is a whole team approach, and I should make use of my developers as well. I should work with my product owners and try and help identify things which are higher priority or lower priority, understanding risk, and so on. What was my backlog at the time? My backlog at the time was only working on products which I can relate to. After working on that company, which was creating shortcodes, I moved into e-commerce. And I moved into e-commerce because I found the products more relatable. As a tester, I wanted to be the customer and actually go through the same journeys that our end users would. I worked at a company called OpenTable, which does restaurant booking, which is a restaurant booking website because I like dining out. So I was using that to book reservations with friends and family. And then I moved into Expedia, which is a big travel company because I enjoy my traveling. If you've used the hotels.com website, I can confidently say that the trip planner which you see on the homepage, the API written for that trip planner was developed by my team, and I was the person who actually tested it. I remember we had a lot of challenges in designing test scenarios around making sure the sessions were not lost between mobile and iPad and web and so on, because you wanted the same user to see the same info. Again, this was easier to do because I myself was the customer, and this was the only thing I was focusing on in my career, that work on products which I can relate to. This was pretty much what my life was becoming. From 2005 onwards, this was about 10 years into my career, and I felt like I was trying to find a picture about spinning plates, but I think this one's more relevant because fidget spinners are the thing, or were the thing. I was not only spinning around tickets and trying to deliver that, I was also trying to spin a lot of things in my personal life. A lot of my friends who were moving into the UK, I wanted to be that person to help them settle down. Moving to a new country is daunting for everybody. And I remember when I moved in 2005, it was very difficult. It was difficult to go to university. It was difficult to find a job. And I did not want any of my friends or family to go through that pain. I was also trying to make sure that I had the perfect home. I was the perfect host. I also wanted to make sure that I was continuously learning. And any article I would find or any conference I would go to, I would bookmark things in Twitter and I would just read. Basically, I was not stopping. And then 2016 happened. I remember I got up in the morning to get ready for work. And I got off at the tube station near work. I got out, I crossed the road, and then one crossing, and then I crossed another crossing, and then I was walking alongside my work building. We had swivel doors, and I went through them and took out my pass from my bag. And you know how you have those gates where you have to tag your work pass? I remember this was the gate, and this was my pass, and I went, no. I just took my bus back up. I put it in my bag. I turned around and I left. I messaged my line manager and I said to him that, sorry, I'm not feeling great. I'm going home. I got into the train and I went home. I went home, I changed, and this is exactly what I was like. I just plunked myself into bed. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. My heartbeat was quite fast at the time. And in my head, I was like, I felt very indifferent or lost. And in my head, I was like, am I a failure? The person who was doing everything perfectly at work and at home just had no energy left. I called a friend in the evening, and I think I eventually went to sleep. It was a beautiful summer day. I still remember that. I called a friend in the evening, and they said to me, you have to see a doctor because this is not you. You're not the person who gives up. And I was like, fine. So I went to my GP, general practitioner, next day. And she asked me, have you lost weight? Like, no, not really. Do you feel happy? And that is a very deep question. And I was like, don't know. And there were a few questions. We went back and forth, and she said, okay, I'm writing you a prescription. Make sure you start taking the medication, and we'll see you in a few weeks. I went to the pharmacy, I got the prescription, and I went home. That day, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety. And I saw the prescription, and I said, this cannot take me down. I will not take this medication. What's funny is, the same year, I got accepted at my first conference ever, which is one of the largest software testing conferences in the world. So was I really a failure? Just made me think. After I came back from the conference, remember I wasn't taking this medication, so I was obviously still quite anxious. And I said, okay, I need to fix this. I cannot not be perfect. And I started doing a lot of reading about anxiety. Some things which resonated with me, I was actually developing quite a few stomach issues. If your stomach's grumbling or you've not slept well, a lot of it is due to anxiety, or you usually have insomnia because you're overthinking, or you're thinking about that solution that you know when you go home and you're like, I know exactly how to write that function, and you're not sleeping. And in the morning, you're like, I just can't wait to get my hands on my laptop, and I just want to write that code out. I was also constantly worrying. If I had a presentation to do 3 weeks from the time, I would be thinking about that, and I'll just keep thinking and thinking and thinking rather than doing something about it or making notes or anything. And I was definitely having trouble breathing. The thing with anxiety is, when I say you have difficulty, trouble breathing, it feels like someone's hand is just constantly on your throat. It doesn't feel like strangling, but you feel like you're breathing from your throat and not, how it's just muscle memory. And these are the things which I realized I was going through a lot of. I was also needing a lot of reassurance. Every time I would test a ticket or I would sign something off, I'd need this reassurance from my product owner rather than going with the confidence to say, I'm happy, I've covered all these scenarios, I've met all the acceptance criteria, and I'm happy for this to be signed off. Can you please look at it? Rather than doing that, I would say, are you sure this is what it should look like? So always second guessing myself. So what was my backlog now? Now that I was going through this anxiety and not taking any medication for it, how was I going to recover from this or put things in place to help myself? I needed a way to recalibrate myself. I hired a personal trainer and I started going to the gym. Physical exercise does wonders. Endorphins are really, really good for you. You actually feel great energy when some people go for a run in the morning or go to the gym in the morning or go to the gym in the afternoon. And I found it really helped. I didn't know how to swim. I started to learn how to swim. I actually I bought a mindfulness coloring book and I used to color. I actually have a few postcards which I was using at the airport yesterday because I was getting anxious before flying. It just helps you just focus on one thing and it's very calming. A lot of people use the Headspace app. I haven't used it yet, but I have started doing meditation as well. Other things that I worked on at the time, I wanted to sit down and think about what really inspired me about my work. And that's when I actually made the switch from being a hands-on tester to a manager. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to empower teams and empower people. I wanted to be the person who would remove roadblocks, and I also wanted to be the person people could come and talk to if they were stuck, whether personally or at work. I also wanted to make sure what drove me to do my job. And what drove me to do my job was still work on products you can relate to, deliver a great customer experience. I also actively started looking for mentors. This is something some of my managers suggested to me at the time, but I actively started looking for a few people who were really inspiring for me. And in the end, I also started making sure I had a really strong but very small support circle. The picture on the top left is myself with Dan North. For those of you who don't know, Dan North invented BDD and now he's an Agile coach. I actually seeked him out as a mentor. This was the first day I met him, actually. I seeked him out because I really like his style of public speaking, and I wanted to do a talk about how BDD goes bad. And he's really helped me understand what type of talks to do. And actually, I'm doing this talk because he suggested to me that I should. Because of him, I've been introduced to a lot more people in his external network as well, who've really helped me learn and move forward in my career. He's also introduced me to a lot of people he's worked with in multiple banks back in London. And again, every time I'm stuck and I'm trying to solve a problem, I just message on that WhatsApp group and it is just a flurry of ideas and there's a flurry of information, or read this book, read this article, and it will help you, and so on and so forth. The picture on the top right, that's my very small but very close support circle. Those are my best friends. Now, fortunately, we all live about 15-minute drive from each other. For me, they're my strong support circle because anytime I want, I can call them and say, I want to have a cup of tea. Or they can call me and we just hang out. I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing. I can go in my pajamas. I can go if I'm feeling sick. They will tell me, Maryam, you're working too much, you need to stop. None of them actually work. So for them to be able to understand my challenges in the workplace is really humbling to me. And honestly, I would not know what to do without them. Yesterday when I landed, I actually took a selfie with the whole branding at the airport, and I sent it to them, and I looked a little shit, and all they said to me was, you look really fresh and enthused. And those are the types of things you want to hear from your support circle because you want them to elevate you and, believe in yourself. The picture in the middle is myself and my brother. I classify him as, I don't think it's a support circle, but it's more of he understands, he grew up with the same expectations of having to be perfect in everything. Although he didn't care as much as I did. He quickly moved out of the house and moved into a hostel, and now he's working in Silicon Valley. But for him, he actually understands when I talk about work challenges and things that are happening in the computing industry, and because he's worked in the same industry, it's just really easy to communicate with him because I know he's not judging me. And that's what you need from your support circle. So this is pretty much what my flowchart looked like. I was aiming really high for everything, whether it was my career or my personal life. I wanted everything to be perfect. No room for failure. And that no room for failure caused me a lot of stress and eventually burnout. And then I found ways to recalibrate myself and protect that recalibration. What really should have happened is that I should have aimed high, be perfect at what I was aiming for, and make sure I kept recalibrating and protecting myself. What's interesting to note here is that I'm constantly using the word perfect. I lost sight of my backlog. My backlog of continuing to read, making sure I kept going to the gym, making sure I kept seeing my friends, I traveled. I did travel still. There was a lot of scope creep. And the scope creep really was, I started adding more things into my plate. Rather than giving myself the space to recover, I actually started volunteering with one of the largest women in tech NGOs in the world because I really believe in that purpose. I started mentoring a few people, and I started writing a lot. I started publishing some articles on my blog, and I was constantly buying all the books I was reading about and trying to just overflow my brain with all this information. My acceptance criteria was not going to be met because my acceptance criteria was make sure you keep an eye on what's driving you and make sure you look after yourself physically. This is a picture of my ECG. This was taken 3.5 weeks ago. Three and a half weeks ago, I was at home, and my entire left shoulder and arm was aching. My back was aching. My left hand was tingling. I was breathing outside of my body. You know, when you've been running a lot and you're trying to stop and gasp for air? It was 10 times like that. I was coughing like I was trying to catch a breath constantly. My legs were shaking uncontrollably. I called 111, which is our emergency service in the UK, and they immediately asked me, do you have an aspirin at home? And in my head, I was like, shit. The next thought that went in my head was, I lost an uncle who was aged 35. And I was like, okay, I'm in the same age bracket. And then after that, I thought, have I hurt someone? And how will people remember me? The nurse at 111, she said to me, just sit upright, concentrate on breathing, and I'm sending an ambulance. The paramedics were in my house within 10 minutes. And they checked my pulse. It was racing. They said, yeah, it's a little bit fast. Do you think you can walk to the ambulance so we can do some checks? And I was like, yeah. I was able to form my sentences and I wasn't sweating. but I was still shaking quite violently, not because it was cold, but I was just shaking and still unable to breathe, and I was still aching quite a lot. And I went to the ambulance and did an ECG and checked my oxygen levels and my blood pressure, and I recovered within 10 minutes without any medication. I basically had a panic attack. And I had all of those symptoms other than the sweating. Trembling, which was the tingling as well, rapid heartbeat, feeling a bit dizzy. I couldn't breathe, which is a shortness of breath. It does feel like someone's chaining your lungs, and hypertension, which is why the pulse was really high. And they said to me, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" I was like, "You tell me." And they're like, "No, you look okay now. Just make sure you eat and you sleep and go to your GP tomorrow." And I was like, fine. I went back in and I just ate. And what's funny is I slept like a baby without anything. The next day I went to the GP, and again, they had all the letters and writings and the ECG and everything. And they said, "Okay, don't you just hate it when doctors ask you, why are you stressed? Who wants to be stressed? Why would you ask that question?" It's like, if I knew this, why would I be here? He said, "I'm going to write you a prescription, and we'll see you in a few weeks." Sounds familiar, right? 3 years ago, same thing. This time, I bought the prescription, and I have started taking the medication. I'm on anti-anxiety and antidepressants. The thing with panic attacks, again, I started reading about it. And a lot of people say it's quite a powerful tool. Panic attack is basically a combination of severe anxiety and adrenaline. It's the extra oxygen in your lungs which is causing that breathing issue, and that's what is causing adrenaline. For me, that was a whole different meaning of adrenaline. Adrenaline, I was confusing the word adrenaline with excitement until now. I'm not going to use the word adrenaline anymore. What I also learned was that when you are having a panic attack, or if you see someone having a panic attack, just help them breathe. Just help them breathe. 3 breaths in, 6 breaths out. Just breathe. And just reassure them or reassure yourself, this will end because it always ends. Have some water and calm yourself down. Again, as I started telling my friends and family, well, a few people in my family, that this has happened, I had a weird array of responses. When I told people at work, I was a bit nervous about telling my workplace. I'm new to the company I'm in, and I was on probation at the time. And I kept thinking, do I want to share this? How will I be perceived in the workplace? But then what I understood was, it's very important to bring your whole self to work. And that's why I will tell them. So I told my manager, and I told my peer group, you don't have to tell people all the details of what challenges you're going to go through. All I told them was that I'm going through some serious health issues and I'm on medication which makes me drowsy, so my timings will just vary quite a bit. And they were like, yeah, let us know whatever you need. My manager immediately sat down with me and we reprioritized all the strategic work I was doing, because that was also causing me stress. When you work in a fast-scaling organization, you want to, again, make sure when you are in a role that I'm in, where I'm heading quality, it's not only quality about engineering, it's quality about how we deliver, how the releases are, and so on. And when you rapidly scale up, it's really difficult to make sure all the processes are aligned. And even that adds stress to us and teams. When I started telling other people, they were like, the first thing I heard was, you look fine. You haven't lost weight. You're still eating. Another thing was, you're very negative. You're always complaining. Well, I'm supposed to find bugs, so I will complain. But it's not complaining, it's just finding things which are designed wrong. And then think about the people who are worse off. When you're going through that difficult mental state at work, you just want that space. You literally feel like creating a boundary around you. I remember when I first had that episode in 2016, my manager at the time said to me, I was off for about 2 months. And he said to me, why are you off? You even went for a holiday. You look fine. I went for a holiday because I wanted to get out of that robotic life that I was leading and just calm myself. And this is why I think it's really, really important to talk about these topics. So now I have to recalibrate again. And I've changed my backlog from finding what drives me and what inspires me to having that support circle, which are the things I already have. My recalibration looks a little bit different now. The first thing, I matter. I cannot pour out of an empty jug. I cannot help my team move forward if I am not feeling great. How can I help them solve problems and create a space for them to discuss issues if I am not in a mental state to listen to it? So I have to work on myself first. And I have to let them know that I need a little bit of space. When I told them one by one rather than in a group setting. And I kid you not, when you share such personal journeys with your team, I'm very fortunate that the first response that I got from all of them was, please tell me, how can I help you? Is there some task which you're looking at which I can pick up for you? Because I was being very mindful of adding more strategic work on top of the teams they were supporting. Each one of them is supporting about 3 engineering teams, and that's a lot of tickets to test and so on and so forth. And because I had been on that journey myself, I did not want to add extra stress for them. But now we've had a lot of discussions, and we actually try and articulate the value of what we're delivering before stressing ourselves about testing those 25 tickets in the last 2 days of the sprint. The next thing I'm doing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's actually quite interesting because it helps you identify what your stressors are and what your coping mechanisms are. Everybody's coping mechanism is different. I've learned that my coping mechanism was emotional rather than problem solving. I would just react quite emotionally rather than thinking about, okay, this is the problem, let's divvy it up and try and solve it separately. Something my father was saying to me recently was that as humans, we always react before we respond. And that's something you really need to think about. When you're given a problem about, okay, this is the software architecture we're designing, how will you create a test strategy for it? And you immediately, my brain would usually go, oh my God, it's too complex. Whereas instead of doing that, I could have just stopped and said, okay, let's try and divide it up into multiple layers. Let's see, and let's simplify the problem. I've gone back into personal training. I'm doing a lot of boxing, which is helping a lot with the anxiety. My trainer knows the challenges I'm going through, and I personally would rather be in physical pain after training than mental pain every day. So make sure you do some sort of physical exercise. And the last thing which has helped me massively is life coaching. I was thinking about getting some coaching towards the middle of this year when I did a playful leadership course by Portia Tung. She runs the School of Play. And I thought, okay, I'm going through this transition in my career, and maybe it's something I could benefit from. And I kid you not, I started working with my coach 2 weeks before the panic attack. So I knew something was going to happen. My body just knew somehow, and that coaching's just helped me a lot. The thing with life coaching is it really helps you understand how you are not being kind to yourself. It also, some things that she said to me when I spoke to her after the panic attack, I was at home and she said to me, I'm quite worried that you're saying a lot of, I need to go to work. I need to make sure the release is on time. I need to make sure my team knows what they need to work on strategically. I need to make sure I cook. There's a lot of I need to. You should not need to do things. You should want to do things. And she made me write this down. She said, Maryam, I want you to write down, I need to. And I want you to cross it out and then write, I want to. And I kid you not, crossing out that I need to took me a good 3 minutes. That's how difficult it was, because I was always having this outwardly desire of pleasing and being perfect to the others. What the coaching has also helped me understand is that level of perfection is something I've set for myself. Nobody set it for me. I'm the only one who's said to myself, oh, I need to make sure that we have 100% test coverage. No, we don't. We need to make sure we test adequately and make sure we test the high-risk items. It's okay to show failure sometimes. It's okay for the teams to go through the pain of finding production issues, because then when everybody feels the pain, they will work with you, and then a whole team approach to testing can be put in place. So really, the whole situation for me has helped me understand that I need to work on myself first. People who go through mental health issues need to think about how they're feeling. If I'm not feeling great, how will I help develop great products? Notice how I've not used the word perfect anymore. In the end, I just want to leave with this. I don't have to take this day all at once, but rather one step, one breath, and one moment at a time. The old me would get really, really nervous about public speaking and being on stage. And today, I'm quite surprised actually, because this is a very personal story. And for me, it's more about making more people aware about the challenges we go through in the software industry and the pace we work in and how we create anxiety and stress in the workplace. I am only one person. I'm not an entire team. I'm one person. Things will get done when they get done. And that's what you need to tell your engineers, your product owners, and everybody else. Quality cannot be rushed is what I've started saying as well now. I'm on a journey. It will take time. I'm not a failure. Anxiety is not a failure. Thank you.